Hey, this is episode 3 of Crossing the Color Line.
You're talking like that again.
Okay, she wants me to be really relaxed, okay? Well, I'm going to relax now. This is episode 3 of Crossing the Color Line. And the topic today, ostensibly, is our wedding. And right now, as we speak, my wife, Letha, say hi, Letha.
Hi.
Is
going through pictures.
Yes, which she should have done an hour ago. So, I want everyone to know, and this may get us some more subscribers, I'm wearing a t-shirt of St. Basil's Cathedral on Red Square in Moscow in honor of the leaders of our government. So you know, that's what this is.
Did you get that in Russia when you were in Russia?
Yeah, I bought a whole bunch of stuff. I've given most of it away, but they had some pretty funny ones. It was right after the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was no longer the Soviet Union, 1994. So everyone was going crazy, printing up all these. You could get a T-shirt that said "Official KGB Agent" in Russian, of course, and so forth. It was very, very funny. They're not laughing anymore, though. Anyhow, I'd like to talk about our wedding. Start off. However, before I do that, I would like to please invite you to viewing us and, importantly, subscribing to us. Maybe I should explain the subscription business. All you get with a subscription, unless I decide to send you a free t-shirt, is a notification of the next episode. Okay, that's nice. But so far we're doing pretty good getting these out once a week. But the subscriptions help us with the whole YouTube process. And I'll be the first to admit I don't get it too well, but my grandson knows all about it. And he says we need people to subscribe. So it's not like you got to pay for this.
You just click on subscribe, like, and click on
like
subscribe.
And subscribe. Very good. And so that's important. Now, why do we pick this topic today, the wedding? It's because, first of all, the most common question is, how did you two meet? And after that, when did you get married? How was your wedding? Blah, blah, blah. Now, I think it's great because, sexist comment, warning, women tend to remember weddings better than men do, okay? I was actually in a fugue state during most of the ceremony, so I would turn this over to my wife here to tell you about how the wedding went.
That was probably because he was the only one there, because none of his family came to the wedding, and his best friend was in the Vietnam. Was John in the Marines?
He was in Vietnam, a Marine in Vietnam.
Yeah, he was and he wasn't in Vietnam then. They just wouldn't let him come. He was in San Diego, I thought, then.
I don't know.
Anyway, we disagree about that. But
among other things,
because his parents, at the time that we got married, didn't agree with him marrying me. In fact, his father sent him to UCLA to study African drumming.
That was fun.
To get him away from me. And he saved all of his money, and I rode the bus over there to visit him, and we stayed with cousins in L.A. But here is a picture of his hand in my hand in 1964.
Yeah.
And
that was kind of symbolic,
Yes. And here is a picture of our kiss. Now, also, this is the next day. This is not during our wedding because the gentleman who was supposed to take the pictures at our wedding did not come. So he came the next day, and we met at my parents' house and took these pictures. This is me with my dad.
Okay.
And this is me with the flower girl. And
I hope these are
And this is
seeable.
Me with my mom. And these are all of my maids of honor, and my sister was my matron of honor. And these are my husband's groomsmen. Now, in that picture, we have two African gentlemen.
Right there.
Valentin
right
Puado and Emmanuel. What was Emmanuel's last name?
Aduaye.
Well, he can say it. I can't. And he took it down. And my brother.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And my brother and his best friend.
Okay,
Vernon.
Her brother is here.
And his best friend.
And Vernon he's
right
the one
there.
that was carrying the gun during the wedding.
And the other gentleman is
Cal Rollins. Yeah.
Cal Rollins.
Cal was interracially married. His wife was German.
His wife was German, Inga. Now, when our wedding was not without
why Vernon was carrying the gun.
Well, Vernon.
And I had nothing to do with white people or the Klan. It was just some crazy people.
And we had our wedding on East Buckeye Road, which was a bad part of town. And it had been rumored that someone was going to disrupt the wedding. So my brother and his best friend Vernon were packing. They were going to make sure that nothing happened at our wedding. So, but while we were getting dressed and everything, and I would ask, "Where's Pat? How's Pat?" And my brother said, "Sweet, I got this." So he and Vernon, were taking care of my then fiance until, the wedding was over, and nothing happened. And nothing happened. We had a really nice wedding, except when I came out to march down the aisle, I didn't know a lot of the people who were there. I may have known them, but they had not been invited. But the
showed
church
up
was
anyway.
Packed. And what people said was, we were going to come to see if this white man was indeed going to marry this Negro woman, because we were Negroes then. But 53 years later, here we are. And when I meet a lot of my friends and everything, they'll say, "Well, Letha, we were worried about whether or not you and Pat were going to last, and we're divorced now, and you and Pat are still together." So I think that's an interesting thing. But our wedding, I thought it was just beautiful, and my sister was really instrumental in planning the wedding and everything, and getting us all fixed up to look beautiful and all of that at the time. So what else?
There's I'm feeling a bit pontifical, which is a bad sign because it means I start lecturing. For some reason, I know why I feel philosophical, because I've just spent 8 days sorting all of our pictures, photos, going way back, including many from my family that go back into the 20s, even one from 1878, my grandmother when she was 2 years old. But going through all those pictures, family pictures and stuff like that, really gets you to thinking. And so I have got this kind of philosophical bent, you might say, and I of course don't know who's watching this, right? People my age, our age, 75, probably have a sense of how important marriage is, and the fact that back then, although some people did live together without benefit of actual ceremony, marriage, justice of the peace, whatever.
It was very unusual.
It was pretty unusual.
Yeah.
And for me, because so many people questioned my relationship with her, and to me it was, I was in love with her, she was in love with me, we were going to get married, that was pretty much it. But the racial issue for other people was huge. And I just want to say, okay, hold on a minute, this is official. And I remember that, I won't tell the whole story about the night of the wedding when we got to our little apartment, But I remember the sense very well. Right now, I can remember 53 plus years ago, my feeling, whew, I'm married now. Okay, I'm married and no one can mess with that. However, you have to bear in mind that at that time, there were 18 states in this country where our marriage was still illegal. If we had traveled there and something had happened, question of rights and so forth. Now, we've had a lot of discussion recently about that situation with gay couples, homosexual couples. And people, I think, relate to that. Someone is ill, they're in the hospital, and they're not allowed any visitors except closest family. You can't come in. But I'm the spouse.
Even with
But I'm the spouse.
The fact that he and I were able to get married here in Arizona before nationally it was legal, we still could not find places to live except in South Phoenix. Now, mind you, this was 1964. Except in South Phoenix. And in fact, the apartment that we lived in was in Tempe.
Near ASU, if you
near
know.
ASU, and we looked for other places to live, and then finally there was this friend that I worked with, Pearl Williams, and she said to me, Letha, you're not going to find a place to live other than over here. It was on 5th Street. In Tempe. And this was the apartments that ASU had for their married students
who were black,
who were African American, because they couldn't get a place to stay either. Now, the other athletes lived on campus, but if they were married, the couples had to have a place to live. And these were the apartments that they could live in over on 5th Street. Because I would call people before we got married. I would call, I'd look in the paper, see apartments for rent, whatever, and I would call them and talk to the people. We would go to the appointments, and the minute they saw me, they would say, I am so sorry. We have just rented it. I did not know that my wife or husband or whomever had made another appointment, and just before you got here, we rented the house, apartment, whatever. So we ended up that second year, we found this house on Broadway that was kind of ramshackled and everything. But they rented to us because we wanted to move out of the apartment.
It was a couple from Chicago. He was an old union man, a plumber, and very Polish, and he was quite jovial and was happy to rent the place to us.
Yeah, but they were the only ones that would rent to us. So in 1965, when we were looking for another place to move, we still could not find a place in Tempe where the university was. And let me go back. There was a professor, a black professor that was supposed to, that I don't recall whether he was supposed to start working at ASU but he was looking for a place to live. The white neighbors bought the house that he was supposed to live in, and so that he would not be able to live in the house. Now, mind you, this is Tempe, Arizona, a university town. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that the Civil Rights Act had already been passed. So this is post, when everything's supposed to be fine, which of course is what makes us laugh when people say with the presidential election that put a black man in the White House, okay, we're post-racial now.
Post-racial.
Well, the Civil Rights Bill had been passed, and it didn't matter, It did matter in the long run because eventually it brought people around, to some degree where things like now housing discrimination still goes on. Don't fool yourself.
Right.
But nevertheless,
as Trump.
It was, well, that's another story. But, I mean, you just have to realize what's going on. So, the question to me, and again, I get philosophical about these things. My wife and I were legally married. Oh, maybe we should mention the Mingus Mountain thing.
Yes.
Um,
That's very good.
We were legally married. It wasn't until 5 years later that the Supreme Court made a decision that our marriage would be legal all over the country. Okay, now, all these incidents pop into our minds. A friend of ours was a caretaker at a camp, a church camp, and he said,
Central Methodist
"Oh,
Church.
no, honey.
Yes.
Okay, she's much more.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, she
Because
really wants
they-
people to know. But you have to understand, these people, the board, when they found out what happened, they apologized profusely to my friend, who was the employee that they fired, because of supposedly what happened. Okay, yeah, it was a church. Anyway, I still park in their parking lot when I go to the ASU library, so I don't want them to
No, that was in Phoenix.
close me out.
That's not the church.
Yeah,
It was in
it
Phoenix.
is. That's okay. That's okay.
I
The
am
point is,
correcting.
He and my friend invited us up to camp out. Church camp. We camped out. There was no one around at that particular weekend or something. So my wife was up there, and I was up there, and my friend was up there. Well, a couple of board members, I believe, or someone of that nature, came by, and they walked by, and they said hi, and talked to Loy a little, and Loy introduced us very nicely, and everything else, and it was fine. Later, Loy got fired for bringing a prostitute up to the camp. Okay, now I don't know how some of you feel, and again, morals, everything.
I think you need to clarify that because they may think that I was supposedly the prostitute.
Well, I wasn't. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
the point is that most men, I think, most husbands would react very, very strongly at someone accusing their wife of being a prostitute, right? But I'm not supposed to do that because, it was this misunderstanding. Well, I don't forget that. It happened. Yes, once my friend cleared it up, and we'll have my friend on this program one day, and he can discuss it a little bit with you.
Because we've been friends,
Yeah.
54.
Since we lived in
Right.
those
that's
apartments
all
on 5th Street in Tempe, he came. But he knew me from when I worked in the bookstore when he was in high school.
He is
would
white,
come
by the way.
Yeah, he's a white
Yeah.
guy. It's a funny story about him and the birth of our son, but we'll save that for another day. Very funny story. So anyway, this kind of thing is what we were up against at that time. Now I've got insurance agents. I mean, I can go on and on with stories. But what I want to just point out, conservatives, and we'll get political, obviously wearing this shirt, I'm making a statement. Conservatives like to say that they're the ones for the morals and marriage. They don't want gays getting married because that does something to marriage. I don't know what the issue is with that. But they seem to be perfectly okay with our marriage being illegitimate in
Right.
some way, right?
Uh-huh.
So, or our relationship, deeper than that, our relationship being an illegitimate relationship somehow. And so what I wanted to say was, we're legitimate. And you do that by getting married. Okay, that right now, probably, I forget, I've been reading statistics, a huge number of people don't bother to get married, and they start living together. We didn't live together. Like I said, when we got married, the first night, we went to that little apartment that was ours, and we were a couple. And I felt so good about that. Well, that's kind of withered, because so many people just don't bother to get married. So the question is, what are you announcing to society? And I guess we'll maybe have people on as guests down the line who will tell us who maybe are in relationships where they haven't got married, but they feel very attached to the person, blah, blah, blah. Why not get married? And for older people, I will have to say this, for elderly people like us, marriage
I'm not elderly.
Sorry. So, we're in an asymmetrical relationship.
Right.
In fact, it sometimes is asymmetrical warfare. But anyway, it is a financial burden on elderly couples who are not married to get married. So there are reasons, I'm sure, why a lot of people don't marry. But for us at the time, of course, it was a major statement to society, which brings in a whole bunch of other things.
Well, I don't know that for me it was a major statement to society. I think for me it was, I loved you and you loved me, and we wanted to get married. Now, we had couples before us that had to go to, I think I mentioned this last week. Jim Boozer, I'm going to mention you and Donna, had to go somewhere else to get married.
I just found their picture in the newspaper from God knows how long ago.
Yes, but they had to go somewhere else, I believe, and get married. Or did they get married after we did?
I think they, well, I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure.
I got the newspaper, I can find it real quick.
But then there was Nadine Cudaby, and there's an interesting story about Nadine, who was a beautiful white woman. My mother had worked for her, and then I worked for her, and she said she had loved black people all her life. But when she was of the age to get married, she was my mom's age, her family just said absolutely not. Well, I don't know what happened, but she did divorce her first husband and married a black man, and then later married another young man that I dated, which was interesting at that time. But we, but anyway, so Nadine and I became really good friends, and as I said, I worked for her and helped to put myself through college, working for her. But one of the other things with getting married, when one gets married, you think if you want children, you're going to have children. But what white people said at that time, it's okay for you two to get married, but don't have children. Now, can you imagine having someone say to you, well, don't have children? And and we're saying, well, why shouldn't you have children? If there's no racism, number one, and if everybody is treated the same, then why wouldn't a black and white couple have children?
I think Toni Morrison, I believe, wrote a very famous novel about the slave woman who killed her baby, and there was a big trial, and it's based on a true story, because she didn't want her child raised in slavery. So I mean, that's like the other side of black women having children. When we bring in black women having children by white men, we have another thing going on. If you go on YouTube, which, by the way, to remind you, please go on YouTube and watch our show, and please subscribe, like, okay, and leave comments. Comments will drive this thing, and believe me, we will read the comments and we will respond to them. And be sure to interact. Okay, be sure to interact. Those are very important.
Because we like that.
If you like this discussion and you want to see us bring some other people who totally disagree with us, we will definitely be doing that. We can find those. They actually
exist.
Go down to Republican Party headquarters. Anyway, I think that we need to bear in mind that if you go on YouTube and go to West Africa, I listen to music and I look at weddings and things like that because I enjoy the culture and everything. As Letha pointed out, I was always very interested in African culture, and so you look at the pictures of people there; they're very, very black skin.
Beautiful black skin. Except
on the coast. Now, people, and I've been reading this monster book, and I'll run some books by you later down the line on the slave trade. There was a huge amount of racial mixing on the west coast of Africa, even 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, etc. So some of the people on the coast, like the guy, in fact, if I can find that wedding picture there.
Oh, it's down there.
Yeah, if you grab it, please.
Okay.
The for top one.
Yeah.
I can show you. See, and this is just perfect. If you look at these two guys, these are the two Africans, and this probably isn't going to show up very well. But you notice that Valentine is a little lighter than Emmanuel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Valentine told me one of his ancestors was Portuguese, right? So the Portuguese were very, very big in the slave trade in the early period. There was a lot of mixing, and so the people on the coast will often be a little bit lighter colored. But you get in the interior and so forth, people are very black. Look at African Americans. Some of them are not black at all in terms of their complexion. They're actually white, but they identify as African American. And that's because of racial mixing. But most of the racial
the one drop rule.
We'll spend, believe me, we'll spend some time on that. I don't want to do that right away in the first few episodes because I tend to get a little academic on these issues. But there was a lot of racial mixing, but it was almost entirely white men using black women. Of course, we have the very recent, 10 years ago or so, case of Thomas Jefferson being outed as the father of a rather large black family. That was in no way unusual.
Right.
So, and we'll talk more about that, but what I wanted to point out was some...
And we'll also talk about Eisenhower, who is often
I'll
not
show you
said
the
to
picture.
be... We'll show the picture here.
Yeah.
And bring in Eisenhower was part black.
Well, my wife states that. Now, I doubt very much if you'll find a presidential historian that will agree to that. However, there is one book out called, I think, 6 Black Presidents, and Eisenhower is definitely in there. How authoritative that book is another question. You know, and I'm very strong on academic, peer-reviewed stuff, and I don't just accept anything that people write. But I've got a picture of Eisenhower's mother, and I think you may get a big kick out of that. But I wanted to deal for just a second with some of the, shall I say, hypocrisy that, some of the craziness, frankly, that's been going on recently. Betsy DeVos is running our education cabinet. I mean, she's a member of the cabinet over the Department of Education, and that's a pretty important post. And I think we need to talk a little bit about politics at some point. Education is a state thing. It's not the federal government. Is not supposed to deal with that. How does the federal government get involved? Because the federal government gives money. If someone gives you money, they're going to want you to account for it. And then all of a sudden, you've got the regulations and so forth. If you don't want the regulations, don't take the money. It's real simple. But most states take the money. In fact, they all do. But when Betsy DeVos was talking about, okay, these people who, the historically black colleges and universities were the first example of choice, right?
Yeah.
Right? Academic choice. Okay, what are you going to do with that?
I thought you wanted me to show it.
Okay. That's the first one. Now, you see those little black faces in there? That was my wife's 5th grade class. Now, according to Betsy DeVos, all of the parents of those students chose to have their children go to an all-black school.
Percy Julian Elementary in South Phoenix.
Now, that was in 1950.
Yeah,
you have to look it on there and see if it's on there.
See when it was, I can't see it.
Okay, here's my wife's 1963 class, 2nd grade, that she was teaching, pretty much the same school. Notice,
across the street.
Yeah, just across the street.
From the school where I attended.
Again, 1963. I guess all those parents of those kids decided they wanted their kids to go to a black school because all those little students are black. I guess that was school choice.
There was a school choice. Yes.
And this, by the way, is the picture of the 1964, the year we were married, faculty of the junior high.
That was my first year of teaching.
So you notice how many of the people in there are black. Not all of them. I think there's a couple of teachers.
Mrs. Dixon began working in she was one of the few whites that worked in an all-black school. And the Roosevelt School District was segregated, even though it was one district.
Okay, now, next time, I don't know, we'll think of something.
And
You tell us.
If you
Subscribe,
tell us,
like, please.
and tell us if you want us to talk more about this, and we would love to. Yeah, there's Mrs. Dixon right there. She was the only white that was there, and she taught in the Roosevelt District forever. Wonderful, wonderful lady.
Oh, we're
Goodbye.
supposed to say bye. Bye.
Subscribe and like us.